in what she was saying about her contract situation with the Indiana Fever. And this is what she said. I'm not even gonna lie. It's a little kind of frustrating. Okay. She said her contract situation with the Indiana Fever was frustrating. She was hoping to get more, but due to her injury, not being able to get in front of teams and all of this stuff, it kind of limited what she was able to get and what she was able to do.
That right there is the sound of someone realizing they said too much. Sophie Cunningham went on her podcast and called her Indiana Fever contract situation frustrating, and Fever fans immediately went nuclear. Within hours, social media erupted with accusations that she's ungrateful, that she doesn't appreciate playing with Caitlin Clark, that she's already thinking about leaving, so she had to issue a public statement walking it back. But here's what nobody's asking. Why did she feel frustrated in the first place? And what does her situation reveal about how the WNBA actually values its role players?
Where she said, I'm going to shut this down right now. I'm not mad about the money. I just wanted more years because I love it here. Now, I do remember Sophie Cunningham saying on her podcast months and months and months ago during the offseason that she did want to sign a long-term contract, okay? She definitely said she wanted to sign a long-term contract and she wanted to get a house and all that good stuff. She said, I just wanted more years because I love it here.
Notice the specific language she uses in that response. I'm not mad about the money. She leads with that because she knows that's what people are assuming. Then she pivots to years, to security, to wanting to bring her dog and donkey to Indiana. It's a masterclass in damage control. Make it about loyalty and lifestyle, not dollars. But let's be real about what happened here. Sophie Cunningham came into free agency hoping for a multi-year deal. She's a proven three-point shooter who just played alongside the biggest star in women's basketball. She thought she had leverage. The Fever gave her 1 year. That's not a vote of confidence, that's a prove-it deal. And the reason she only got 1 year isn't complicated. She missed significant time with an ankle injury last season. Teams couldn't evaluate her in person during the free agency period. She had no leverage to negotiate from a position of strength. So Indiana offered her the minimum they could get away with. 1 season, take it or leave it. That's business. But it's also a reminder that in the WNBA, even playing next to Caitlin Clark doesn't automatically translate into long-term security.
But that is what Sophie Cunningham had to say in response to people kind of going off on her situation. Now, I want to get to this, man, because this entire Natasha Cloud situation is crazy, okay? I feel like she got a bunch of people in the media trying to advocate for her and do all of this stuff. When the bottom line is, I kind of feel like you put yourself in this situation. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta understand what leverage you do have versus...
Now, this is where things get interesting. Because while Sophie Cunningham is walking back her comments and trying to smooth things over with Fever fans, there's another player who's learning a much harsher lesson about leverage. Natasha Cloud is sitting at home right now with no job. Training camp is starting across the league, and one of last year's starting guards for the New York Liberty, a team that went to the finals, can't get a contract. Not a max deal. Not even a mid-level exception. Nothing. And the reason why reveals something uncomfortable about how the WNBA actually works when the cameras are off.
Training camp has started for everybody. She don't have no job still. She was a starter for the New York Liberty last year. Now she's jobless. Let's take a listen.
We understand basic economics, we understand business models.
That was one of the esteemed deacons at Woke United Methodist and former woke welfare collector in the WNBA, Natasha Cloud. And I say former woke welfare collector for a reason, because Natasha Cloud is currently unemployed. As you just heard in the clip, Natasha Cloud claims to have a firm understanding of business. Over the last 12-18 months, Tasha was one of the leading voices in the fight to get WNBA players money that they claim they have earned, or as the IRS prefers to call it, a donation. For reasons unknown, Natasha Cloud believes that she is worth millions of dollars. But there's just one problem, one tiny problem. Every team in the WNBA believes Natasha Cloud is financially...
Listen to how he frames this. Natasha Cloud believes she is worth millions of dollars, but every team in the WNBA believes Natasha Cloud is financially worthless. That's brutal, but it's also accurate. Because here's what happened. Natasha Cloud spent the last 2 years positioning herself as one of the most vocal advocates for player empowerment in the WNBA. She demanded higher salaries. She criticized ownership. She called out fans. She skipped league events to lobby for political causes. She accused Caitlin Clark fans of racism. She campaigned for socialist candidates while living in New York City on a $117,000 salary. And all of that was fine when she was making minimum wage and nobody expected much from her. The WNBA tolerated it because the investment was minimal. But now the league has real money coming in. Corporate sponsors are writing 8-figure checks. Television networks are paying for broadcast rights. Owners are actually investing capital into these teams. And with that investment comes expectations. You can't take the money and then spend your time antagonizing the people writing the checks. You can't demand to be paid like a superstar when you produce like a role player. Natasha Cloud had the mouth of a franchise cornerstone and the statistics of a replacement-level guard. And now she's finding out what happens when you overplay your hand.
Worthless.
Oh, damn.
I have been telling you guys.
Yo, man, this dude be going off. He be going off. He be going off, bruh.
For years. There will come a point when the sympathy money runs out. There always comes a point when you will be expected to perform. You'll be expected to produce something of value. You'll be expected to produce something besides toxic ass gas. And you will be faced with one of two options. You either step up or you step aside. Or in the case of Natasha Cloud, you get pushed aside. For some reason, WNBA players, they've always seemed to struggle with the concept of value. There is this belief that is
This is the part that's going to make people uncomfortable, but it needs to be said. When Natasha Cloud was making $117,000 per year, teams viewed her as a low-risk investment. If she wanted to skip All-Star Weekend to protest mythical racism, fine. You're not paying her enough to care. If she wanted to call America trash on social media, whatever. She's a minimum contract player, but the moment WNBA salaries started climbing into 6 and 7 figures, the calculation changed. Because now there's actual financial risk involved. Now ownership groups are investing real capital. Now corporate sponsors are attaching their brands to these players. And Natasha Cloud didn't adjust her behavior to match the new reality. She kept acting like someone with superstar leverage, when her on-court production didn't justify it. She averaged 8.6 points and 4.3 assists last season. Those are rotation player numbers, not franchise cornerstone numbers. But she carried herself like she was Breanna Stewart. She made demands like she was Aja Wilson. And when free agency came around, teams looked at her resume and said, we can find someone who produces the same stats without the constant controversy. That's not blackballing. That's not collusion. That's basic business calculation. Why would any team pay premium money for average production plus guaranteed headaches?
Prevalent in the WNBA that players should be paid millions of dollars because they pretend to play basketball professionally, when the reality is very few, and I mean very, very few in the WNBA are worth the millions of dollars that they are currently being paid. For years now, Natasha Cloud has had the mouth of a superstar and the production of a role player. According to Natasha Cloud, America is trash. I am so sad.
See, this is what I'm saying. Natasha Cloud was doing a lot of stuff. Listen, you just got to understand where you at. You know, I'm cool with you. You know, you could take your stances and all that, but like certain things, you're going to have to relax some. You're just going to have to relax some. You're not Nafisa Collier. Nafisa Collier could get away with calling out Kathy Engelbert the way she did. You're not her. You know what I mean? I just feel like you overplayed your hand, and now you on the outside looking in, you know, hoping to get a job. I mean,
Natasha Cloud is proud to be a brigadier general in the woke army leading the fight against mythical racism. She has accused fans of Caitlin Clark of being racist. Last summer, she campaigned for Zorro Mamdani to be the lead destroyer of New York City. At the time, Natasha Cloud was living in New York.
And here's where the contrast between Sophie Cunningham and Natasha Cloud becomes really instructive. Sophie said something mildly critical about her contract situation on a podcast, and she immediately issued a public clarification within hours. She understood that playing for Indiana means living under a microscope because of Caitlin Clark. She recognized that Fever fans are hypersensitive to anything that sounds like criticism. So she walked it back, reframed it as being about years instead of money, and moved on. That's someone who understands leverage. Natasha Cloud, on the other hand, spent months publicly criticizing ownership, alienating fan bases, and positioning herself as a controversial figure, and then seemed genuinely surprised when teams decided they didn't want to deal with it. She thought her advocacy gave her leverage. She thought being outspoken made her valuable. But the market is telling her something different. The market is saying that controversy without production is worthless. The market is saying that teams would rather sign a quiet role player who shows up and does her job than a vocal activist who produces the same stats but comes with constant media drama. Now, some people are going to hear this and accuse me of saying players should shut up and dribble. That's not what I'm saying. Players have every right to use their platform for advocacy. But they also need to understand that choices have consequences. If you're going to be controversial, you better be so good that teams have no choice but to sign you anyway. Breanna Stewart can say whatever she wants because she's a generational talent. Aja Wilson has earned the right to speak her mind because she's the best player in the league. But if you're averaging 8 points per game, you don't have that luxury. You need to pick your battles.
New York City while playing for the New York Lesbians in the WNBA.
Yo, this dude be wildin'. He be wildin'. I don't agree with everything he say. I just think he has interesting points. I don't agree with everything he say.
She was encouraging New Yorkers to vote for. She decided to skip the entire WNBA season to combat mythical racism and lobby for stricter gun control laws. At the time, she was making around $117,000 a year in the WNBA. In terms of professional athletes, Natasha Cloud was basically making minimum wage. When there is minimal investment, there's also minimal expectations. But now, with WNBA players making millions of dollars, the expectations have drastically increased. There is real investment in this dump of a league. And Natasha Cloud is finding out the hard way that she is no longer wanted.
Damn. Hey, man, he got his stance. I'm just saying. Natasha Cloud, you may have overplayed your hand because you are.
Watch this part carefully, because this is where it gets personal. He's not just criticizing Natasha Cloud's business decisions. He's questioning whether she ever understood how value works in professional sports. And that's the fundamental issue here. For years, WNBA players have operated under this assumption that they deserve to be paid millions of dollars simply because NBA players make millions of dollars. There's this belief that salary should be based on effort or skill level relative to other women, rather than on the revenue you actually generate. But that's not how professional sports works. You don't get paid based on how hard you work or how good you are compared to your peers. You get paid based on how much money you bring in. And the harsh reality is that most WNBA players don't generate enough revenue to justify the salaries they're currently making. The league loses money every single year. It's subsidized by the NBA. The only reason salaries have gone up recently is because of Caitlin Clark bringing in massive television ratings and corporate sponsorships. She's generating the revenue that's funding everyone else's raises. So when Natasha Cloud demands to be paid like a star without producing star-level results or bringing in star-level revenue, she's fundamentally misunderstanding the business model. Teams aren't charities. Owners aren't running these franchises out of the goodness of their hearts. They're making business decisions. And right now, the business decision is that Natasha Cloud isn't worth the investment. Not because she's being blackballed for her activism, but because her on-court production doesn't justify the off-court headaches.
Are still on the outside looking in. Get down in the comments. Let me know what you think about all of this stuff. This is Keep the Vision.
So here's what this all comes down to. Sophie Cunningham and Natasha Cloud are both learning the same lesson, just at different extremes. Sophie learned that even playing next to Caitlin Clark doesn't guarantee you long-term security if you get injured at the wrong time. The Fever gave her 1 year because they could, because she had no leverage, because the market said she was worth exactly 1 season and not a day more. She didn't like it. She said as much on her podcast, but she understood it quickly enough to walk it back and protect her reputation. Natasha Cloud is learning a much harsher version of the same lesson. She thought her advocacy gave her leverage. She thought being vocal and controversial made her valuable. She thought teams would have to sign her because of her resume. But the market is telling her she was wrong about all of it. And now she's sitting at home while training camps open across the league, watching players with worse statistics sign contracts because those players understood something she didn't. In professional sports, you only have as much leverage as someone is willing to pay you for. The WNBA is changing. Real money is flowing into the league now. Corporate sponsors are investing. Television networks are paying for broadcast rights. And with that money comes accountability. Players who thought they could say whatever they wanted because nobody was paying attention are finding out that people are paying attention now. The stakes are higher. The expectations are greater. And if you can't adjust to that new reality, you're going to get left behind. Sophie Cunningham adjusted. She said something that upset fans, recognized her mistake, and corrected course within hours. She'll be fine. She'll play this season, prove she's healthy, and probably get a better deal next year. Natasha Cloud didn't adjust. She kept pushing boundaries, kept being controversial, kept acting like she had leverage she didn't actually possess. And now she's unemployed. That's not injustice. That's not blackballing. That's just business. Cold, calculated, rational business. And in professional sports, business always wins. The question for every WNBA player watching this situation unfold is simple. Which lesson are you going to learn? Are you going to be like Sophie Cunningham, who understands when to push and when to back off, who recognizes the limits of her leverage and operates within them? Or are you going to be like Natasha Cloud, who overplayed her hand so badly that she priced herself out of the league entirely? Because the market doesn't care about your intentions. The market doesn't care about your activism. The market only cares about whether you can produce results without creating problems. And right now, the market is sending a very clear message about what happens when you forget that. So drop a comment and let me know what you think. Was Natasha Cloud right to stand on principle even if it cost her a job? Or did she fundamentally misunderstand her own value? And what about Sophie Cunningham? Should she have kept quiet about being frustrated, or does she have a right to speak honestly about her contract situation? Because this conversation is bigger than just two players. This is about how the entire WNBA is going to operate now that real money is involved. The rules are changing, the expectations are different, and players who don't adapt are going to get left behind. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.